It may be time to rethink the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie. From the start, a common assumption was that this was a relatively amateur operation. Premeditated, yes, but not that sophisticated. Well, now there's a major new focus as the search nears week number 6. The FBI is now looking at internet outages around the time the 84-year-old disappeared. The new development comes as FBI agents head back to Guthrie's Tucson neighborhood and canvass residents there door to door. They're asking if anyone's internet went out that morning, the morning that Guthrie vanished. If so, it could have disabled their surveillance cameras during that critical time period and prevented them from recording what could be valuable evidence in Guthrie's case. This all comes as investigators zero in further on the doorbell camera video. It's really the only clue they have so far, capturing the masked suspect approaching Nancy's door. Here's what they're now focused on. See that small black device that was in the man's pocket? They're wondering if this could be a signal jammer, which the suspect could have used to cause an internet blackout.
The reason the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie is now considered a highly sophisticated, targeted abduction comes down to a single terrifying 41-minute window that authorities are desperately trying to decode. Now, there's a chilling sequence of events that could blow this entire investigation wide open. Let's take a look. An 84-year-old woman, the mother of Today Show co-anchor Savannah Guthrie, vanishes from her upscale Arizona home in the dead of night. No forced entry into the main living areas. No obvious signs of a chaotic home invasion. Just a surgical extraction that leaves behind a mystery that continues to baffle the FBI. A mystery that TikTok detectives and Reddit sleuths are absolutely convinced they have solved. Millions of views, thousands of comment threads, all pointing the finger at the exact same person. They analyzed every leaked detail, scrutinized the family's timeline, and decided that the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie was an inside job. They pointed at her son-in-law Tommaso Cioni, who dropped her off that night. They claimed the timeline didn't make sense. They said the 1:47 a.m. camera disconnect was too clean, too perfect, something only someone with access to the house could pull off. But are they right? While the internet is busy analyzing different theories, the real investigation is uncovering a reality far more terrifying than any comment section could imagine. The reason investigators are terrified comes down to a timeline that was never supposed to be leaked to the public. In it, law enforcement traces a digital footprint from 1:47 in the morning, and the suspect's own movements fill the frame, executing a kidnapping in detail that only a person who planned it for weeks would ever know. His face is hidden behind a mask, his hands covered in gloves. They've probably burned all the clothes. They've got rid of the backpack, but they couldn't get rid of the digital evidence left behind in the neighborhood. So that's good. That's good evidence. But the camera footage wasn't even the worst thing investigators found. The internet records were worse. The trace evidence was worse than that. And what cyber experts uncovered about the neighborhood's security systems turned a missing persons case into the most damning and baffling abduction mystery in the entire country. This is what the first 48 hours inside that crime scene revealed. The timeline opens cold. Saturday, January 31st, 9:50 p.m. Nancy is dropped off at her home in the Catalina foothills by her son-in-law, Tommaso Cioni, after a family dinner. She had taken an Uber there earlier, ate dinner, played games, and then Tommaso drove her back. The garage door closes. Nancy is alone, but she's in great spirits. Hold on, because that last detail matters more than you think. It means the last evening Nancy Guthrie spent as a free woman ended with her laughing at her own family's dinner table, surrounded by people she trusted completely. She had limited mobility. She relied on daily medication. She had a pacemaker. She wasn't planning on going anywhere. For 4 hours, the desert was silent. Then, at 1:47 a.m., a figure emerged from the shadows. Captured on a Nest doorbell camera, a man in a ski mask and a dark jacket reached up and didn't just smash the lens. He professionally disabled the feed. But while the camera went dark, a digital witness inside Nancy's chest was still recording. Her pacemaker was designed to sync with a bedside monitor at specific intervals. At exactly 2:28 a.m., that connection was severed. That creates a terrifying 41-minute window. Between the camera being cut and the pacemaker failing to sync, the abduction was over. When family arrived the next morning, the scene was chillingly still. Her phone, Apple Watch, and glasses were all untouched on the nightstand. But near the front entrance, investigators found what they were dreading: bloodstains. Forensic testing confirmed the blood belonged to Nancy. The FBI's Violent Crimes Division arrived to a room of deafening silence. This wasn't a disappearance. It was a clinical, surgical extraction. But here's the deal. The FBI wasn't done. They started canvassing the neighborhood, pulling ring camera footage from every house within a 2-mile radius. And this is where it gets truly disturbing, because what agents pulled out of those neighborhood internet records made the physical break-in look like child's play. A few days into the investigation, a couple living near Nancy reported something strange. They have 4 ring cameras on their property. When they checked the footage from the night Nancy was taken, 3 of the cameras worked perfectly. But the one camera pointing closest to Nancy's house, it displayed a chilling message: not available. They had never seen that error before. And the timestamp? Exactly during the 41-minute window Nancy was abducted. Agent after agent began knocking on doors. Did your internet go out? Did your cameras fail? The answers started piling up. Multiple neighbors experienced complete digital blackouts during that exact time frame. The suspect didn't just disable Nancy's doorbell. Cyber experts and investigators now believe he used an illegal Wi-Fi jamming device to blind the entire street's security network. These aren't vague coincidences open to interpretation. They reference a specific, highly technical operational plan. The woman who laughed at dinner and trusted her neighborhood's safety was reduced to a target profile by a man carrying military-grade electronic warfare tools in a $20 Walmart backpack. Now here's what the public tried to do. The internet tried to solve it. TikTok detectives scrambled for anything. They blamed family friends. They scrutinized timelines. They claimed the 1:47 a.m. camera disconnect was an inside job. The FBI doesn't even blink. They know the timeline. They have the cell tower records. They have the facts. But the lack of public updates was driving the country insane. And then, 3 weeks in, they found the glove. A black glove was discovered along a dirt path 2 miles from the residence. The media exploded. This was it. The DNA breakthrough. The mistake the kidnapper finally made. The Pima County Sheriff, Chris Nanos, stood in front of the cameras. The warmth drained out of his voice. He leaned forward to the microphones and delivered the truth. The DNA on the glove didn't belong to a master criminal. It belonged to a local restaurant worker, completely unconnected. The glove was garbage, a dead end. The public's rehearsed hope completely gone. Darting eyes, full panic mode. They pivoted again. What about the body found near the Phoenix Canal? Sheriff Nanos shut that down cold. Unrelated, no connection, not Nancy. The man who strutted onto Nancy's porch in the dark seemed to be a ghost. He thought he was smart enough to cover his physical and digital tracks. He thought he'd erased everything. But the evidence wasn't finished with him yet, because what a neighbor reported next didn't just explain how he planned the kidnapping. It proved he had been hunting Nancy for weeks. Here's the catch. Criminals almost always assume their pre-surveillance goes unnoticed. That assumption is almost universally wrong. Weeks before the abduction, around January 11th, a neighbor named Aldine noticed something out of place. A strange man walking slowly through the upscale, hilly neighborhood. He wasn't wearing the typical brightly colored hiking gear you see in the Catalina foothills. He was in dark street clothes. He was hunched over, and he took a long, lingering look at Nancy Guthrie's house. He wasn't just passing through, he was researching. He was conducting specific operational planning, looking for doorbell cameras, bypassing residential sight lines, finding the weak points, all while Nancy was inside, completely unaware. When investigators asked the neighbor to describe him, the details matched the terrifying figure caught on the Nest camera a month later. At this point, the public tried demanding answers from the sheriff. Why aren't there suspects? Why aren't there arrests? But the FBI's strategy wasn't about appeasing the public. It was about following the money. Days into the search, media outlets like TMZ received purported ransom notes. The demands were staggering. $6 million payable in anonymous Bitcoin, deadlines set for Thursday, and then pushed to Monday. The notes included granular details to build credibility. Mentions of a floodlight at Nancy's home, an Apple Watch left behind. But here's the ticking bomb. When you demand a ransom, you have to provide proof of life. A photo, a voice recording, something to prove the 84-year-old woman is still breathing. the kidnapper provided nothing. Not a single document or file suggesting Nancy was safe. The FBI digital forensic specialists recovered the emails, traced the IP addresses. They even made an arrest on one individual who tried to send a fake ransom demand to cash in on the tragedy. Self-preservation won. It always does. When facing federal wire fraud and extortion charges, the fake kidnapper folded in hours. But the real kidnapper? The man from the porch? Silence. And this is where it gets truly chilling. The most damaging reality is that an 84-year-old woman with a heart condition was taken without her daily medications. The searches the public is doing online right now are horrifying. How long can elderly individuals survive without prescribed medications? Methods for surviving in the Arizona desert. He wasn't just executing a kidnapping. He was planning for the possibility, maybe the intention, that Nancy wouldn't survive it. But the physical trail only explained the past. What law enforcement is doing behind closed doors right now reveals the future of this case. And it started with the FBI's absolute terrifying silence. 6 weeks in, the public thinks the case is going cold. News anchors ask if the investigation is stalled. The family is experiencing what psychologists call ambiguous loss, frozen in grief, unable to mourn, unable to celebrate. Savannah Guthrie steps away from the Today Show. She misses the Winter Olympics. She sits in front of a camera, her eyes red, and begs for her mother's life. "Please be the light in the dark," she pleads. But former FBI profilers watching this case recognize the breaking point. They recognize the silence. And they know exactly what lead investigators are doing. The confrontational pressure of daily press conferences has disappeared, replaced by something far more dangerous for the suspect: total operational silence. After weeks of gathering evidence, the FBI isn't scrambling, they are waiting. You see, when a violent struggle happens, when you break into a house and drag an 84-year-old woman out the door, you breathe, you sweat, you shed microscopic pieces of yourself. Former agents confirm that the suspect almost certainly left breathed-out trace DNA in that house, on the doorframe, on the floor where the blood was found. They don't have a name yet, but they have his genetic code. They are running familial DNA tracking right now, pinging databases, building family trees, narrowing down the cousins, the uncles, the brothers of the man who wore that mask, and they aren't saying a word to the media because they don't want the suspect to run. They are letting him think he got away with it. They are letting him grow confident, letting him sleep in his own bed. They are building a runway, giving this man every opportunity to lock himself into a false sense of security before a SWAT team puts a battering ram through his front door. That crack in the suspect's flawless plan? It's about to become a complete collapse. The Guthrie family just increased the reward to $1 million. That money sits right alongside a massive FBI reward. $1 million is enough to make loyalties evaporate. $1 million is enough to make a cousin, a friend, or an accomplice realize that self-preservation is their only way out. Because when federal kidnapping charges enter the picture, loyalty dies in 4 seconds flat. The footage captures the exact moment a masked man thought he was untouchable. But every digital footprint is cataloged. Every Wi-Fi anomaly is documented. And somewhere in a federal lab, a DNA sequencer is filling in every gap the physical cameras couldn't reach. 6 weeks. That's how long an 84-year-old woman has been missing. But here's the most disturbing part of this entire nightmare. And it's not the jammer. It's not the blood. It's not the 41-minute window. Nancy Guthrie, 84 years old. The woman who laughed at her own dinner table the night she was taken. The mother who relies on a pacemaker just to keep her heart beating. She was ripped from her life by someone who viewed her as nothing more than leverage. What the FBI is preparing to drop on this suspect is going to leave hardened criminals unable to speak. Subscribe now, because when that trace DNA finally gets a match, the arrest footage is going to shake the entire country. And the question everyone in that FBI command post is asking right now is whether Nancy Guthrie is still alive.